Hello, I'm Derek Wheatley, and welcome to episode 26 of the Wheatley podcast. As ever, thank you very much for your support during the week, for listening to Sean's episode. It was great to catch up with him, and as always, he's an entertaining person. He fixed my mic stand. That's what I wanted to thank him for, and also for coming on. Listen, we're doing the Facebook Live thing again. I did it. Well, this is recorded on Sunday, but I did it last night. But it'll be back next Saturday night at 6:30. If you don't get it live, that's okay, because it's obviously stays on Facebook. That's just the way it works. I'm going to introduce my guest today. She is a psychology graduate and the creative director of Between Two Books, and her name is Leah Moloney. Hello,
thanks so much for having me, Derek.
You're welcome. I nearly butchered the whole sentence there. I hung on, but it's great to have you on. I will start as always with the short history of your upbringing, if you don't mind.
Okay, so it's not that exciting, but I was born in Dublin, and I moved to Athlone when I was 7, which is where my mum is from, and went to Summerhill Primary School, which is where I met John Francis, who recommended me to come on this podcast.
Yes,
so thank you so much, John. Nice, I really appreciate that. Summerhill 2K9 forever. Then I went to the Bauer, and then I went to college and studied psychology in Dublin, and I also spent a term in the Netherlands and at university there on an Erasmus exchange.
Oh, nice.
So yeah.
How was that?
It was actually quite difficult. It was like it was an amazing experience, but it's living in a different country is so different to traveling around, because I learned so much about myself and just things that we take for granted, like our support systems that we have built up over years and years and years, and then to start from scratch, it's really difficult. But it's an amazing country, and it was a great experience. I had lots of adventures.
I'd say so, because a lot of people probably wouldn't have the opportunity, so it must be really cool to kind of...
Exactly. No, I'm so glad I took the opportunity, because and now I know when I move abroad again, which will be in quite a while due to the current pandemic. I'll kind of know how to go about it differently, because I've done it before. I know what mistakes I've made. So
nice. And just out of sheer nosiness, what part of Dublin were you?
I was born in Holles Street, and then I lived in Donabate, and also a place called Stamullen, which is technically in Meath. But
yeah, we used to go down to... My mom used to bring me and my 2 brothers down to the Donabate beach from time to time.
Oh my gosh, no way!
Yeah, we lived in Swords. So yeah.
What? Are you from Swords?
Well, I was here till I was 8, and then we were up there for 10 years.
So kind of like the opposite of me.
Kind of like
wow.
That, yeah.
No, because I've a lot of family in Swords, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, and I've so many nice memories of me, and I've 2 younger brothers, me and my 2 younger brothers, and my mum, walking on Donabate Beach. It's a really special place for me. Yeah.
See, this goes to show you, this little conversation, that we did not chat about any of this beforehand. It's good.
It's really nice.
This is why I never want to talk to my guests until the mics are on. So on a different subject, always the second question. When was the first time you became aware of mental health?
I remember, I don't know the exact age, but I say I was about 9. I was definitely a child, and I remember seeing an ad on TV or something, and it stated that 3 in 10 people would suffer from mental health issues, 1 in 3 or something in their lifetime. And I remember being that's mental health was such a foreign concept. It wasn't something that was in the vernacular. It was what's that? And it seemed very outside of your own life and your own situation. I didn't really know anything about it, and it seemed like something that would never happen to you or your family, when in actual fact everyone has mental health. Literally everyone.
And I think that's about that ad is particularly back then, because it was very little wasn't talked about too much.
That's it.
So how vague the ad must have been to somebody who obviously had never experienced it at the time, but maybe you'd never heard of it at the time, and most people may not have heard of it.
Well, I think I had experienced it at the time. I just couldn't put a label on it. And I think that's something that I see with the current generation, children and young teenagers these days. I don't think that one could argue that they are experiencing higher rates of mental health issues, but I don't think they are. I think that they're just able to label what they're describing a lot better. You know, like kids as young as 8 or even younger are able to describe like feelings of like sadness and loneliness and anxiety. And I think I experienced those things too. I think many of us did, but I didn't have the vocabulary to describe it and to define it. So I think we've made a lot. I mean, this was only like 13 years ago, 14, I don't know about that, and I think we've made a lot of positive change since then.
Because I think we would have said back then that it was a case of, oh, that's just growing up, that's what you experience when you're growing up, and that was just a kind of such a dismissive kind of way of putting it, when there was much deeper things going on. As Sean talked about last week on this show, actually, of being at school and having a hard time at school and taking it home with him and things like that. And during none of it, when he was talking about it last week, did he mention any of that it was mental health problems? It was just that's
what it was,
you know?
And I think it was very lonely. I think for me, like looking back, I can see that I've had anxiety since like I was a young kid, but it wasn't recognized until I was a teenager, you know. And for me anyways, it was quite lonely because, and it was more terrifying than it should have been, because it felt really, I just felt so alien, because I didn't know that it was actually quite a normal thing to experience. And again, that comes back to the lack of awareness, the lack of words to describe it. And
when did you have, like, was it a steady anxiety? Was it panic attacks as well, or was it?
No, it wasn't. I do suffer from panic disorder. Luckily it's under control now, thank God, because they're horrific. But sure. When I was younger, no, it wasn't like that. It was more just like quite bad generalized anxiety. So
which is exhausting. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I was talking a little bit about it yesterday on the Saturday segment about, at the moment I'm in a little bit of a low, and it's a lot of it is driven by anxiety, and obviously anxiety causes lack of sleep, because obviously you're lying there and you're thinking,
oh my God, I know it,
and it's so rough, and then the next day you get up and you're still anxious, but you're so exhausted, and it's almost like it gets into your bones, you know.
It does. I mean, like, mental health, and this is something that I would have done a lot of in my degree. Mental health is so physical. Like, we've done sort of like the neurobiology behind it, and you know, excess levels of cortisol, which is a stress hormone, basically like messes up your immune system and messes up all of your systems, and then lack of sleep exacerbates that. So like it does literally get into your bones.
It's horrible, you
know. So it's quite a vicious cycle.
It is, and that's the thing. And I always feel bad for the people who are kind of suffering in silence, and they are maybe even suffering with just I don't mean this in a bad way, but with ignorance of the subject. They don't know what it is that's going on, and you know, I suppose that's just what, you know, people are trying to tell, or that's what we're doing this for, and that's why other people are doing things like that for that reason. I want to talk a bit more about actually mental health a little bit later on, if that's okay. But so where did you study psychology, and why were you drawn to it?
I studied in Trinity, which is in Dublin. I had a really great experience there, I must say. Like, I loved my degree and I loved my university. I loved Dublin. But I got into it, I think, like, for me, I had never really heard of psychology until I was about 16, which seems so strange, because now, like, I've studied it for my undergrad degree. But I became aware of it, I think, when I had like a mental health issue arise when I was approximately 16, 17. And I became, like, I looked up a lot about this mental health issue. It was an eating disorder. Like, I had anorexia, and I was like fascinated. I think it's also a symptom of the disorder itself, but I like became fascinated with the disorder itself, and was looking up loads about it, and I was looking up studies about it. And again, I must stress that I think that was a problem, to be so consumed by it. But it also sort of introduced me to what psychology was, and then I started like looking into, like, I had been interested in things like medicine and speech and language therapy, and I realized that my interest in the sort of medical field was actually an interest in humans themselves and human behavior and the mind, as opposed to, say, like, the bodily systems. And also I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and I don't know what I want to do. That's normal, everybody, it's fine. But psychology seemed like I have quite a lot of interests. I love history, philosophy, psychology, languages, like there's a lot. And psychology is a really good sort of like merging, because you do like the history of psychology, there's philosophy in it, there's a lot of biology in it through neuroscience, chemistry comes into it, genetics. It's a really broad degree. And I also I don't think I knew this when I was choosing what to do, but I really see my university experience not just as the degree but as the whole experience. I learned so much through societies, through living on my own for the first time, through socializing, through different events that went on. So I thought I'm really happy with my experience at university. It was quite a broad education, not just academic.
That's good. And it's 4 years.
4 years, 4 years.
And how has studying psychology changed your perception of the kind of world around you? I suppose what you're touching on there, really.
When you study psychology, you just, everything's an experiment. Every human, every group of people. I suppose, but I just learned a lot about how humans work, and it has informed a lot of things that I've done since then. As in not big career moves or anything, but just my own relationships, my own life. It's quite interesting.
I just talking to you a little bit about it. I didn't realize how important it was. Right, this is my own fault, but I didn't realize how important psychology was until I was maybe 26, 27. Had the first breakdown, and then started looking into it. So, like I said to you, it's a surface level education on it. Very much in books that you just pick up, in your local bookshops. Won't mention any names, but there's so much to it. And like I say, the surface level of looking at why someone might suffer with anxiety, for instance, or why they're bipolar and stuff. Just that one little thing, which is a small thing in the world of psychology, is huge. And for you to say that you didn't really, at 16 was when you started to get interested in it. At 18 you were studying it. That's quite a jump. It's amazing.
It is quite a jump, but I do think that interest in human behavior and humans and the mind had always been there. I just didn't really know that there was a proper scientific field of it until I was 16. And kind of similar story to you, because my mental health was not doing great, that's how I learnt about it all. So but psychology is super broad. I mean, for my dissertation I did social discourse, which is basically social psychology, and I interviewed people and analysed their discourse. And I did it in the field of I focused it on the direct provision system. And I got what inspired that was I mentioned that I was abroad and I found it quite difficult, and so that got me thinking of the people who come to Ireland, and especially the people who come to Ireland and are stuck in our completely abhorrent direct provision system, how difficult it must be. I don't want to undermine my own experience, but at least I had the opportunity to come back. At least I had access to psychological supports and social systems, my social support system back in Ireland, whereas these people, they're trapped and they don't even get their basic needs met.
Basic food and things in...
So
I know there's a lot to go. I won't
and direct provision, that's it.
So I talk about social discourse, and we follow you on Instagram. So on your Instagram stories you talk a little bit about you talk about lots of different topics on that. Whether it's about racism, direct provision, there's another thing that's going on at the moment with, it's been going on for a long time, about clothes, where people buy their clothes and they were trying to, was it Boohoo?
Fast fashion,
that kind of stuff. Is it Boohoo? Is that the right?
Yeah, I think it's Boohoo. Basically, I would be quite an advocate for sustainable fashion and anti-fast fashion, because the fast fashion industry contributes a lot to destruction of the environment, global warming, and like slave labor, and like just capitalism in general.
Yeah, in general, exactly. So like that, it's when I, as John pointed me in your direction. So obviously we were following on that. So it's always I always think it's great when people are highlighting those things, whether it's not enough people are doing it. Obviously, the Black Lives Matter thing is slowly starting to slip away a bit, unfortunately.
You have to keep up the momentum.
You do, and it's like, because 4 years ago or 5 years ago when they were talking about the different the people who died on the streets those days, there was it was kind of a similar trajectory where it went high, everybody was talking about it, and then it out a bit.
A friend of mine told me that because I was kind of like, when this was all happening, I was like, oh, how can I go about it best, and I was kind of overthinking it, but she gave me some good advice, and she was like, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And this is what has happened. A lot of people did sprint and obviously ran out of steam because they weren't keeping it steady. So it wasn't about like doing spurts, because that's what I didn't do, like this massive spurt of action in June, because I didn't have the energy for it. And I was kind of like, oh, am I doing enough? And then I spoke to my friend and I was like, okay, actually I am, because I'm going to continue to do it. It's not about doing loads and then forgetting about it.
It's right, it's true. And I did just a small little bit when I was talking about it on the Facebook Live before I stopped doing it for a while. I picked out 5 books about some were non-fiction, some were fiction, about the black experience in America and Britain. Actually, it wasn't just America, but I was in such a kind of annoyed state or something, and I don't know, I like cancelled stuff. I cancelled the live thing and everything. I just said, right, that's it, because I was kind of done, and I felt like I needed to just like lash out with something. But unfortunately, I lashed out with something that I actually was enjoying doing, which was kind of weird, But like, obviously the more people talking about it, the better it is for everyone. And I don't know, people will say, what can you do about it? Like in Ireland, a white person in Ireland, what can they do about it? But like, why not try and do something about it? Like,
I mean, it's as simple as like, I feel like the term calling people out seems like really like, aggressive or something, but it's really not. It's just about like someone, I mean, I've definitely been called out before. No, the thing is, I think with and let me just put it out there, I'm definitely not the voice for this, I really amn't, but as a white person, I think like we were all complicit, like we really are, and it's uncomfortable to realize that, because we all want to be good people, but it's not that you're not a good person because you've done these things in the past. Like, we're all learning, and I think once you realize that, you can be easier on yourself and also more helpful to the movement. But things just like, if a family member or a neighbor or a friend says something, and it could be in ignorance, like they might not intend to be offensive, but it doesn't matter, because the impact is the same. It's just about like calling them out about these things, reading just be like, I remember, like I said to a friend recently, like I won't mention what happened, but anyways, I was like, oh, like I don't think that's okay to say just because of this. And then she was really like, oh yeah, thanks for letting me know that.
Exactly.
And likewise, people will say the same thing to me, and you just have to realize that just be receptive to that.
And speaking of capitalism, I better do an ad. Fusion Training Centre, Monksland Athlone. A place to train in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, kickboxing, martial arts and CrossFit. A great atmosphere with experienced coaches and a real sense of community. If you want to join the team, find us on Fusion... messed it up. Find us on Facebook at Fusion Training Centre, or drop in for a chat. Fusion Training Centre Athlone. Train like a warrior. That's a little bit of karma for not editing Sean's ad last week. So I deserve that. Anyway, so tell us... how did first of all, what is Between Two Books, and how did it come about?
Okay, so Between Two Books is the book club of Florence Welsh, who is lead singer of Florence and the Machine.
Can I just ask you just a tiny question?
Yeah.
Florence and the Machine is a band, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a band.
It's not like, because a lot of people think...
No, it's a band. It's a band,
okay,
100%.
Okay.
Yeah. we're
cool.
Definitely a band. But yeah, so it started 8 years ago. We celebrated our birthday this week, our 8th birthday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. And yeah, it's quite a funny story. But basically, like, so I'm 23, and when I was 13, so like literally a decade ago, I downloaded an album called Lungs by the band Florence and the Machine. Loved it, like the first album that I like properly just fell in love with, and that like really spoke to me. And like I remember like listening on my like 2007 iPod. Yeah, I think it was like one of the only albums that I downloaded, because like back in the days of dial-up internet, it took like a week to download an album or something. But anyways, yeah, I really liked it, and I thought Florence was brilliant, like, you know. And then 2 years later, so in 2012, I was quite active on Twitter, and I followed Florence on Twitter, and at the time she was on tour in North America, and she tweeted a picture of herself outside this bookstore called Powell's in Portland in Oregon. And like she had her hands up in the air and like looked really happy, and her caption was like books, books, books. And I like was literally just like, you know, like sitting on my couch, just finished the junior cert, like was in Athlone, like, you know, scrolling on my phone, and I just saw that tweet, and like I was like, oh, like why doesn't she have her own book club? Like because she's got, like, she's famous, like, so she could use her name to advocate for literature, and she's clearly really into books. So I just tweeted it because I feel like I'm quite an impulsive person, which is, you know, it has its bad sides, but it can also be useful. So I just like tweeted this like random idea that seemed completely far-fetched, and was like, oh, Florence should have her own book club, like where she reads books and then like talks about them. And the other sort of like fans who were following me saw the tweet and were like, this is a good idea, like we should do it. So I set up a Twitter account called Between Two Books, after her song Between Two Lungs, which is on their first album. And like just was like, okay, like this is gonna be like a small thing, we can like recommend some books that she has mentioned like in interviews. But the next day she actually found out about the account and was like, this is a great idea, I want to do it. So that's how it began. But yeah, a lot has happened in the past 8 years.
I can imagine.
It's quite hard to sum up the past 8 years, but it's really grown and developed, and we have like a really, really beautiful and wonderful community.
It's great.
Yeah.
I just put out the numbers here because obviously you know the way it is now.
Yeah.
Everybody's big on numbers. It's all about numbers. So like Between Two Books Instagram account is 134,000 followers.
Yeah.
And the Facebook has 33,000 likes. I'm on both of them now, by the way.
Yay. So welcome to the club.
Next time you put out the books that you're going to be reading, I'll be on them. But
yes.
So you tell me then, tell people who maybe it's the older generation that are listening, who may not have heard of Florence and the Machine. What kind of, it's a reductive question. Yeah. But you know the way it is. What genre would you say her music is? It's very hard to answer, I think.
Like, I hope I don't mess this up. I know, I'm only messing. It's kind of like alternative pop rock, but it's quite, I suppose, there's a lot of sort of orchestral elements to it, and kind of experimental as well.
I think. Yeah. Can I tell you my little experience with her music, right? So when the first album came out, I heard Dog Days Are Over, and I thought, that's an amazing song, like, and because it was very, very different to what was happening on the radio at the time.
Yes, yeah.
So every year I watch Glastonbury on BBC, and she was on that year. She was on the third stage, third from the top,
the pyramid, third from the pyramid.
And excuse me, she played "The Chain" by Fleetwood Mac, and I was like, jeez, I mean, it was top quality.
Can I just say, I've been like listening to that song like non-stop the past few days.
Such a good song. Yeah. I mean, but this is the thing, like, because it's such a good song, to take it on, such a well-known song as well, to take it on, and the crowd, like, she drew such a big crowd, and I feel bad for the two other stages who were above her, probably, but it was really taking off her. Like, she has had, obviously, #1 albums in Britain, #1 albums in America, which is something that maybe British groups of the last 20 years haven't done, who people probably expected to, the likes of Oasis and even someone like Robbie Williams and stuff, that people would thought it. So she's a very, very big artist, a very big name. And then this is the last bit. Then I heard her. I think I heard it on something like the X Factor or something. She did "Shake It Out," and to me, it's one of the best songs of the 2010s. Now, people will probably turn around and say, "Yeah, but you're 38 and you don't listen to new music," and that's fine. But it's still an amazing song. When it starts with the organ and it's such a big sounding song.
Yeah,
as well.
it's really big sound.
So. Like for when did you say 13?
I was sorry. So I started the book club when I was 15. Yeah.
So for a 15-year-old who loves Florence and the Machine, to be contacted by Florence herself, it must have been pretty. What was the right word?
Firstly, it's like, I think it's kind of like strange for me to hear those sort of like facts about the band's albums and stuff, because like I work for them, so I kind of it's become so normal that I kind of forget that they're like a really big band. I was just like, I was like, oh yeah, they are like, but yes, certainly at the time, I was like so excited about it, and it was really surreal because, you know, I was just like a 15-year-old schoolgirl from Athlone, and like I absolutely no contacts to the music industry or to any of that sort of world, and it was my first sort of foray into it, so it was like really like what's happening, and it was very surreal, and I was really happy about it. And
you've hosted some talks.
So we started doing live events. I miss them. But yeah, we started doing live events 3 years ago. So we started actually in Ireland, which was really nice. We did Boris House Festival of Writing and Ideas. That was our first festival slot that Between Two Books got. So we interviewed the Irish author Emer McBride, who wrote A Girl Is a Half-Worm Thing, The Less Bohemians, and she's just actually released a new one this year called Strange Hotel. So we interviewed her. So myself, Florence, and 3 of my colleagues interviewed her, and that was our. It was really good fun. I was definitely super nervous though, because it was my first time doing an event with Between Two Books. But yeah, and that was the beginning of it, and since then we've done some more events. So Florence released her own book, her first book called Useless Magic, a collection of her lyrics and poetry, in 2018. So we were quite involved in that campaign, and we had like a book launch in London, and we've done some festivals. The most recent ones were in 2019, so we were at British Summertime in Hyde Park. We got our own like mini stage that we built there, which was really cool. And we also had a slot at Forum Arcosanti, which is a festival in Arizona in the States. And for that, we interviewed Nadia Tlokonikiva, who is of Pussy Riot, the artist and activist, and Yersa Daly Ward, who is an incredible writer, poet, and amazing person.
Like, how do you just yourself now? How do you find those events? Is it something you really enjoy? Like, you look forward to?
Adore them. It's really wonderful to be able to see the community in person, because before we'd started the events, like, it was purely online, and with the pandemic, of course, it's currently now also purely online, but it's really, really special to see the community in person. It's just wonderful. And also, like, I really like performing. I enjoy being on stage. And I love the excitement of events and festivals. It's just so thrilling and like wonderful for me. So yeah, I love them. I want to do more, and we do plan to do more, but it's just obviously contingent on how the pandemic pans out. So
I mean, that's because you did mention anxiety earlier on, and
yes,
is it something that still affects your anxiety?
It is. So I think actually this is an interesting point. So I think a lot of people think anxiety is like, stage fright and like being really shy and stuff, but I'm not a shy person. I love, like I said, I love being on stage and performing. And I think, there's sort of like one way that we see anxiety, but actually anxiety affects people in so many different ways. So for me, it's very much like just generalized anxiety. So like I'll be like literally just like at home, and then I'll be like convinced that something's gonna come hurt me or something, you know what I mean? Like completely, it's irrational thoughts, stuff like that. It's not that I don't get anxious like on stage or talking to people. I mean, that said, before big events, of course I have normal sort of like adrenaline and nerves, and like I'm like, oh my god. But that, I think that's just like performance anxiety. Like the key to tackling performance anxiety is just continuing to do it. And like certainly as I've continued to do events, I've become less nervous about it. I mean, you just get used to, I mean, even today, like you're speaking in front of a microphone, you get used to it. Obviously the first few times you do it, it's completely new. You don't know how it all works. You don't know how the equipment works. You don't know how the events work. And it's all like, but you get used to it. And that's how I think you tackle that sort of like performance anxiety. But certainly people need to realize that anxiety affects people in many different ways.
Exactly. And I will say that I spoke about this before. I would much rather be on a stage than in a crowd, just because I get such bad anxiety when I'm in a crowd. Whereas if I'm up on a stage, I feel I have a little bit more control, you know.
Oh, that's very interesting. Yeah.
You know, and that's just me. Like you say, it's everybody is completely different.
Yeah.
You know, this is a tough question. I wrote this question and I was thinking, if someone asked me this, I'd be like, oh, damn you. What do books mean to you?
Books connect me with people. I think that's one of the biggest things, especially through Between Two Books. Like Between Two Books completely opened up my world and connected me with, like, I've made friends. I've made some really good friends with book clubbers, and then I've met other like artists and writers and musicians that we've collaborated with. Books make you feel less alone. Like I've read a few books that deal with mental health issues, and certainly reading them you just feel like, oh, okay, it's not me. And they can, I mean, like, you know, good prose, good poetry, good songwriting as well, like it puts into words feelings and thoughts that you can't define, that you can't make tangible, and it does that for you. It makes them tangible, and it makes you feel less alone in your experience. That's
you know, if someone asked me that, I'd be like, escapism.
Escapism too, yes, for sure.
I would say that is a kind of answer it sounds lame, but it's actually a big thing, because you do just you literally, if you're having an anxious day, we'll say, and you're reading some fiction, if you can take over the character, if it's well written, you can be that other character for a little while, and that's amazing. And non-fiction can be something that spurs you on. If you like we were talking a little bit about earlier on, if you read something that you disagree with, it might make you want to go and do something about it, or read up on it and find out more. So there's so much, like, it's done for me, you know. So reading it is different for everyone. When it comes down to something like Between Two Books, like, but I've never been in a book club, so I can't say. It's obviously opened up your reading choices. Hugely, like.
Well, you're in a book club now.
Good point.
For sure. Like, the thing with Between Two Books, and like a lot of us who work, like my team who work on the club, we'll have similar experiences with it. Like, it has opened us up to new genres, to books that we wouldn't necessarily reach for, and a lot of our members would you know, send us messages saying this as well. And certainly for me, like, because of Between Two Books, I've read genres that I wouldn't have reached for, or like books that I'll stick with a book that I mightn't necessarily be enjoying, and then at the end I'll be like, okay, I'm glad I read that. So that's what a book club does. It can really open up your reading choices.
Yeah, exactly. That's steady, and that's why I'm glad to be part of it.
Welcome.
So thank you. We talked briefly on the phone the other day, because we hadn't met beforehand, so it was nice to kind of touch base. But what genre and style do you really like to read in? I know you like to read a lot of different stuff.
Yeah, no, I do have one or a couple of genres that I tend to read a lot of, and that would be memoir and poetry. Okay. And I think that's quite related to my interest in, like, human beings in general, because memoir and poetry is really like about the mind, about your innermost, like, mind. And with poetry and memoir, like the writer is really, like, you know, bearing their soul on the page. So I think that's why I really enjoy those genres.
You don't really get I don't know, this actually probably sounds it's not meant to sound bad, but you don't get many young people saying poetry.
Yeah.
because it's got a right. I tell you why I say that. When I was in school and we had to learn, poetry for the junior and leaving cert, it was always the same stuff. Like, and it
had a bad rep.
yeah, and it had but it had the kind of the dry. There was nothing. Nothing felt experimental about it.
Yeah, it wasn't exciting.
No, yeah,
it didn't engage you.
I mean, there are obviously good poems that we were reading, but there was nothing that kind of,
Yeah, well, I'm glad you brought that up, because like I've definitely in the past few years noticed that poetry is having more of a moment now. I would say that a lot of young people like poetry, but I think that might be context dependent, because like I went to quite, and I don't know how to describe Trinity, but like a lot of people in it were, big readers, and there was a lot of poetry. Yeah, I don't know, but I think in terms of how it was taught in school, for sure. I mean, I did my leaving cert 5 years ago, and by the way, my teacher was amazing, but it's more the curriculum. It's it's quite like dry, and it's completely confined to the page, and I think there's just so much more that we could be doing with poetry, because poetry is brilliant, it's amazing. And I don't know, maybe if students had more freedom to choose poetry that really speaks to them, if there was more performance poetry, like, I mean, hearing, I love like going to see a poet read. It's amazing, and to see what they do with it, it's like it's a concert, like, it's a show. And I think there needs to be, they just need to take it from the page. Like,
I describe Trinity as I tell you what, right, I feel like an imposter walking through it, put it that way, but I do like sitting beside the cricket field there. But
it's a great spot.
It's a lovely spot. But the thing, like, there's young people listen to poetry all the time. It just happens to be in the form of song, and it's it's a lyric in a song. It's not seen as poetry.
That's completely true. Yes.
And like you were saying about Florence, but a lot of the great writers, like Bob Dylan is a good example. There's many more, obviously, but Dylan, because it was his music was more word based than anything, really.
Yeah.
But put it down on a page and remove the music and just put it in front of someone, and they'll be thinking that's a brilliant piece of poetry. And it's like you say, the curriculum or the way it's presented can ruin it completely for everyone.
This is quite interesting, because I mentioned that Florence released a book 2 years ago, literally called Useless Magic: Lyrics and Poetry. And she explores a lot of like what makes a song, what makes a poem. I think that's actually like the introduction to it. Like, she meditates on like what is it that distinguishes them. And I know that her most recent album, High as Hope, a lot of those songs began as poems and then just kind of took a life of their own. So her book, particularly the poetry in it, deals a lot with, wondering what is it that makes a song, what is it that makes a poem. Like, are they completely separate, or like do they merge into each other? How
does she decide, right, well, this is clearly a lyric and this is just a poem? That's interesting. I didn't even know she'd written a book about that kind of subject, which would be, I'd probably be interested in.
The paperback is out in November. That's so
some sales,
just saying. So you should get a copy.
I'm going to get a copy. So we'll kind of go. As we were talking about lyrics, we'll steer the conversation towards actually no. That was one last question I want to ask.
Yeah, go for it.
2 or 3 memoirs that you'd.
Oh yes,
you'd really
I do.
Like
I have.
People to
yes,
read.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is such a great question. I'm so excited about it. So, The Terrible by Yrsa Daley-Ward. I mentioned Yrsa Daley-Ward because we did an event with her last year at Forum. Actually, this was an amazing moment. So, Yrsa Daley-Ward. Something that we like to do between 2 books is like make it really collaborative, and like we don't want it to just be like Florence's recommendations or recommendations from the team. We like to ask people that we admire as artists for their recommendations. So 4 years ago, we had the poet Nayera Waheed, who wrote the amazing book of poetry called Salt. We featured that book, and we reached out to her for a recommendation. So she recommended Bone by Yrsa Daley-Ward. and we all fell in love with it. Like, I fell in love with it, Florence fell in love with it, the book clubbers fell in love with it, and then her book was actually like republished by Penguin, and then she released her memoir, published by Penguin 2 years ago, called The Terrible. And at Forum, the festival that we were at in Arizona last year, Yrsa came on, so Florence and the Machine played a set, and Yrsa Daly Ward came on like between two of the...
You have to hit the mic stand. Everybody has to hit the mic stand. It doesn't count.
Yes, okay, bingo.
Everybody does it.
Yrsa Daly Ward came on between two songs, between two books, between two songs, literally, to recite some of her poetry.
Oh, wow.
So she she featured in Florence and the Machine set, which was amazing, and it was like a visual merging, like a physical merging of poetry and of song, and it was just amazing. And then we interviewed her for our event about her book, The Terrible. So The Terrible, it's a memoir about her life. I think the tagline is like a storyteller's memoir, but she deals a lot with mental health in it, and she describes it as the terrible, but the terrible is like it's a fluid concept. It's whatever the terrible is to you, right. So like my the terrible will be different to hers,
of course.
But there's a really, I can like see it in my mind, a really beautiful passage about what the terrible is in it. And it's a really like experimental book, because I would recommend reading it as opposed to listening it, but you could do both. But anyways, it's really visual. So it's there'll be like sentences that are written like one to a page, or I don't know, like trickling down a page. Like it's just it's her style is just incredible. It's really it's just absolutely brilliant. It's beautiful, it's heartbreaking, it's wonderful. The second one then would be Tristomania by Jay Griffiths, which is about bipolar 2 disorder. So she likes to refer to it as Tristomania because she feels that, I think this was like the original word for it, it comes from the Greek like Tristomania, which means like sadness, happiness. I think I think and it's basically about like her struggles with Tristomania, but her writing is like so poetic, so lyrical, so beautiful. Like it's incredible. I'd highly recommend reading it. And she's so honest with her experience with it, and her like journey of managing it, I suppose.
I've never heard of it, and that's kind of I really have to read that, because bipolar 2 is what I was diagnosed with. So to read that would be probably be definitely required reading. Definitely read it if you feel that it would serve you. Okay, the third one would be The Outrun by Amy Liptrow. There are definitely way more, but this is just the third one that's coming to me. So it's about her struggles with alcoholism. But like it's all of these like memoirs, it doesn't matter what the diagnosis is. Like if you suffer from any sort of mental health issue, it'll be a really good read. But so she's from the Orkney Islands, which is an archipelago. Also, I didn't know what that meant before I read the book. So basically an archipelago is, wait, I don't even know what it is, but it's like an island. It's like an island. Something like a collection of islands. Something like that, off the like northern coast of Scotland. And she moves to London when she's like in her late teens, I think. And that's when her alcoholism becomes quite a problem. So she moves back to Orkney and begins her recovery and begins sobriety. And she I just feel the need to mention this, she's currently like 38 weeks pregnant with her second child, and nice. She's sober. So she's a really, really inspirational lady for anyone suffering from alcoholism, substance abuse, or any sort of mental health problem. But the reason that I absolutely loved this book was because it's about how nature can help heal you, and how going back to like the simple things in life
can be so healing and refreshing. There's a lot about like sea swimming and like bird watching, and even though I'm not from Scotland, I think our terrains and our cultural landscapes too are quite similar, as in Ireland and Scotland. So my version of Orkney would be like Belmullet, which is where my grandmother's from, which I visit as often as I can. It's like a really beautiful rugged landscape with like loads of like beautiful beaches and nature. So I think we all have our own version of Orkney.
There are three obviously very appropriate to the podcast as well, and people listening with mental health. There's definitely three that I'm going to have to pick up. There's four I'm going to have to pick up. Florence is one of them. Goes without saying. So how big of a role, and obviously this goes back to music, how big of a role does music play in your life?
Okay, like really, really big role. It's like one of my biggest passions. I say my biggest passions would be like music psychology, literature, and then like traveling. I spend a lot of my time listening to music. I love performing. I love singing.
You sing,
I love I can't even describe it. I'm like at a loss for words.
When it comes to singing, do you perform live? Do you sing, record for Facebook? What way do you do it?
So I feel like I'm still at the beginning of my like musical journey. And that kind of freaked me out, because I feel like at 23 I'm like too old, which is completely ridiculous. But this is a thing. I think a lot of young creatives can feel the pressure to do things at like a super young age and be this child prodigy. Like I won't name names, but like we can all imagine, you know, there are certain artists out there who have just achieved like a massive amount of fame at a really young age, and you kind of feel like you have to do that, and you feel like, well, I certainly feel like I have some sort of like expiry date, and that I need to do things, and that it's now too late because I'm 23, which I recognize is ridiculous. And also like I know that I've done other things in the past few years that I've really enjoyed. I'm on my own path. So, but like at the moment I just kind of like record covers, and I'm starting to foray into like production and stuff. I'm like, you know, buying equipment, and I'm getting some people are like helping teach me, and I'm beginning to collaborate with people. I do write, and I'm teaching myself how to just produce and stuff like that. I use Logic Pro X. So I'm still at the beginning of my journey. Like I've just done things like open mics and stuff, but singing is like one of my like favorite things to do ever. It gives me so much joy, and actually I found that singing really helps with my mental health, with my anxiety and panic disorder in particular, because singing like really connects you to your body, because the sound is coming from you, it's coming from your body, you know. So it kind of, if you're feeling a bit out of body, if you're feeling a bit dissociated from your body, it can like bring you back, and you're just focused on producing that sound. And it brings me so much joy to sing, to hit a note, to I just absolutely adore it. So I really hope I will continue on this path, and like I would love to like release an EP at some stage. Brilliant. But I just don't know when that will be. Like I said, I'm still in the sort of like learning stage. So
well, look, this allow me to give you a little bit of advice, right? Well, I was the exact same, by the way. When I was 23, it's kind of like, you know, that's done, right? I hadn't written a song. I'm talking about now. I hadn't written a song in like 10 years, okay? And like 4 or 5 weeks ago, I was just in the room there, and I started plucking some chords together, right? So they came together. Then I started writing 2 lines at a time in snatches, not connected. Nothing was connected. When I read it fully back, I was like, that's definitely about mental health. Then I sang it, and I sang it twice. I put it on the live. If you want to listen to it, actually, it's on the thing from last night. And it's like, I like doing it, or whatever. Like, you've got so many irons and all kinds of fires, so you've got so much going on. But like, to me, that was just something that was like it. Where did it come from? I didn't sit down to write a song.
Exactly.
And it's a weird thing. Music is such a weird thing, because it can come at any moment, you know.
You can't control it.
No, and like I wouldn't call myself a singer. I play the guitar and I do a bit of singing, but you know, if it's only me and the guitar, I have to sing it. Like, you know,
yeah.
So I would say, like, Jesus, it's great that you're learning production, by the way, as well. That's
yeah,
obviously
it's really
so
like
cool.
it's literally like when did I start? I started a few months ago. Like I just, I didn't really have the time when I was doing my degree, and I only graduated last year. So I put like, I literally like, I need to do, it's so hard. I'm like, I need to like write the lyrics, and I need to like produce a song, that I need to be the engineer, that I need to be the tech, that I need to be the singer, that I need to be the pianist. It's like, what?
It's a lot. Like, it takes you're
yeah.
like, who does all that? There is artists who do everything. Who
But
kind
I
of
think
start it off.
that's true, yeah. But like I'm not doing that by choice. I think it's just I've found it so hard to find people to collaborate
that's
with.
the problem, yeah.
So if anybody listening wants to,
If anybody wants to join a band, hey, look, seriously though, if anybody does.
But yeah, no, I think that yeah, it's a problem for, especially like right now. Like I'm based. I mean, I love Athlone, but like it's not a musical hub, so I think that's a bit of a problem too. So what I'm focusing on at the moment is like long distance collaboration. So yeah,
look, it's so easy now, like it may
with Zoom and everything. Yeah,
if you had your dial-up internet, it might be a different story.
You couldn't even download a song, let alone like collaborate.
Who are your biggest influences then?
Oh God.
I know Florence is.
Well,
Florence and the Machine is one.
I have to say Florence and the Machine. I have to. They're great. I like Björk. I like Aurora. I like Sigrid. I like Billie Eilish.
I don't know Aurora, but I know the others.
Yeah, Aurora is a Norwegian singer.
Oh.
Her music is like dreamy. Like it's really, really good.
There's quite a few northern.
That's I saw like within the space of like a month last year, I saw like 3 Norwegian artists and one Icelandic artist. So I was like, they're honestly they're brilliant. They're so good. They're having a moment. Yeah.
Do you know what I love? I asked you the question now.
No, tell me.
Lord, because he's just.
I was just thinking. I was like, why didn't I say Lord? Yeah, Lord as well.
Because you mentioned the young people who started. She was 15, 16 or something. So which is crazy. But she's certainly got her own style.
Oh, she's brilliant. I absolutely adore her. I think a lot of my inspirations tend to be like people around the same age as me. Yeah,
it's great. Like
it is. Yeah.
And like when you're saying about Florence, would her, like we were saying about Fleetwood Mac, she's obviously hugely inspired by Fleetwood.
Yeah. Also Fleetwood Mac. Yes, Fleetwood Mac as well.
But would that have been through Florence and the Machine that you heard about?
I'd say it probably was, because I think with Florence and the Machine, like I was young when I started listening to their music, and so and the internet was becoming, social media was becoming more of a thing. So I think I probably was introduced to a lot of bands through maybe things that she's covered and stuff. Yeah,
I think that's deadly.
Or like similar artists.
Yeah, but I think that's deadly because I had I loved the Beatles. I listened to the Beatles when I was quite young. And I just started listening to all the 60s bands then.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it like.
There and see all the Beatles.
Yeah, that's literally what I was doing. I was like, I can see the vinyl.
No, I've noticed. They're actually they're calendars. The vinyls they're calendars.
Oh my god, cool! I love it. I love it. It looks great.
Yeah, thank you. I did start listening to all these 60s groups like the Stones and the Hollies and all these people just because of the Beatles.
Yeah, that's how it happens. Like you listen to one, especially like I, as a young teenager, I was developing my musical taste. So when something really grabs you, then you're gonna look for similar, for artists in the same sort of like realm. So yeah,
that's great. So actually we covered that next question by your singing bit, but that's all right. And I would just want to actually return to mental health actually, because I want to speak on the mental health within the creative industry. Tell us a bit, because you mentioned it to me. So, and I suppose coming back to it, the people will know of the major deaths. We'll say the people who took their own lives, and that was what they saw as the really bad mental health problems. But there's obviously so much more underneath all that.
Yeah, I think within the creative industry, like there's just so much pressure there, and so much uncertainty, and so much comparison, and also like it's your own work, it's your own self that you're putting out there. Like it's not like something that's separate to you. Like your art is very intrinsically linked to who you are, so it can be very scary putting it out there. And also, like, there's just a huge amount of like criticism and like bullying that goes on within the creative industry. So I think, there needs to be a lot more support for creatives. Did you see that? What was it? Songs to an Empty Room. Did you see that last night?
No, and do you know why?
Yeah.
Because I go to bed at like 9 o'clock. I saw your posts about it. So how was it? Was it good?
It was amazing. It was really, really good. Basically, it was an initiative set up to support the crews that are behind the live music industry, or like the events industry, because they're being like severely impacted by the pandemic. I mean, of course everyone is, but like
that's nothing, like it's 100% closure and,
exactly. And like they don't know when they're going to open again. Like I'm involved in events myself, and we're just like stick to online. But for people like, you know, sound techs and tour managers and all that sort of crew, like they're really suffering right now. So this was put on to support them. And there's also there's an organization called Minding Creative Minds, which they were also raising funds for, which is like an organization set up to support musicians' mental health and people involved in the music industry. So
that's great.
There is positivity out there.
I mean, that's great. I did know it was coming on, but like I said, I did go to bed pretty early because I get up.
No, you're lucky. I'm like the opposite.
But I would say about the mental health industry, the creative industry and the link. The problem with mental health in industries like that, right? So, like you say, people are putting their art out there. They're putting everything, like, you know, their whole creativity into something, and it might be criticized by the press. By, you know, it's about maybe like it wasn't as good as their previous album, we'll say. And then unfortunately the record company decides, well, you know, we won't give them as much publicity, whatever it is. The problem is the person is normally the one that's discarded. You know, it's always that way. It's never like there's nobody there
quite
to help them.
disposable.
Very much so. And even then at the top, they're like these huge artists that have nobody knows what that feels like. You know, it's impossible. You know, like it's really, I think that is the thing when you're in this field. Like, that's why people regenerate themselves and have like a new look, or like they foray into like they go from like being an actor to being a singer to being a model. You know, like it's just how it works, because you're constantly trying to keep your stuff fresh, because the whole expiry thing comes up again. You seem to expire quite quickly, and you're so disposable, you know. And like going back to the psychology side of things, nobody has the tools to deal with that level of we'll say fame, whatever you want to call it.
No, this is the thing, like people are literally, humans are not supposed to be famous. Like it's unnatural, and it's very damaging. It's not a good thing.
I mean, hopefully something gets done about it, and you know, there's a bit more drawn to a bit more notice drawn to it, I should say.
Exactly.
So you have this is a different thing altogether. You have dyspraxia.
Yes, I do.
Could you explain to people who may not know what that is?
Yeah, for sure. So dyspraxia is also known as developmental coordination disorder. It's really not got a lot of awareness. Even myself, like I was only diagnosed when I was a teenager, but it's like it affects your like fine motor skills, gross motor skills, coordination in general, spatial awareness, executive functioning, organizational skills, like all that sort of jazz. So like for me, it means I'm like quite a disorganized person. I can't drive, a bit clumsy, that type of thing. So
is there, this is probably a silly question, but just out of, I don't know, there's obviously different levels. So if it varies in severity, like anything. You are somebody who's what's the word I'm looking for? Advocates?
An advocate for it. Because it's I found that like with myself, like I've been quite like misunderstood, because people might be impatient with me, which I totally get, but I'm like, if it was something that was more visible or more awareness, people would be more understanding and wouldn't be quick to think that I'm doing things out of malice. I'm like, no, I literally, my brain just doesn't work.
Look, this is the thing, and that slides back towards mental health as well.
I mean, it's definitely like dyspraxia, having it within itself, obviously like it's difficult, but it has its good points. Like I think, like I mentioned, sort of like being more impulsive, and I think there's a lot of people with dyspraxia are quite creative as well, and it has its strengths, but it's more the reaction from people or how they treat me, the sort of like misunderstanding, and that's what has affected my mental health, and that's why I would definitely like I want people to be more aware of it.
It's
and to like, you know, give people the benefit of the doubt, you know, so people just
that's just the way people are. I only know about it the last 6 months, and I'm 38, so it's kind of one of those things maybe not enough people.
No, exactly. It's just, it needs a lot more awareness.
Well, thanks for telling us that.
For sure.
I was going to ask you if you got a question for me, but to be honest with you, I even wrote down beside it, not important, the last time I'm going to ask anyone.
Okay, I do have a question for
really?
you.
Okay,
What book would you recommend?
That's actually an excellent question. I'm not going to say, like, my favorite book is To Kill a Mockingbird, right? Because I read it in school and I just thought, Jesus, like, that was unbelievable. But I think do you know what? The book that kind of blew me away the most, and people know about it now because films and stuff, but In Cold Blood by Truman Capote. That for me was one where I was just like, oh, people need to read this book. As for authors, like people like Cormac McCarthy, I think he's just one of those authors.
He's brilliant.
He's so good. Like he does, obviously, people who don't know, he's done different genres, but he's done, you know, he's had films made from his books as well. But I love Cormac McCarthy. I love Raymond Carver. As a short story writer, is probably, along with Alice Munro, who's probably the greatest short story writer. And you only asked me one book.
There's always a few.
There's always a few. But Would You Please Be Quiet, Please, by Ray McCarver. Actually, I've changed it. I've changed my mind. That's the one. Go and read it. It's a short book as well.
Everybody go read it. I'm going to go read it now.
Do you know what the thing about it? His short stories are basically about just something that just happened over its course of 10 minutes, and he just wrote it.
Wow.
It's incredible. That's the last time I'm going to ask that question, just because people are running out of questions for me. This is episode 26.
But I don't know, my question, I didn't have a question in mind, but then it just came up naturally. I was like, we've had this discussion, and then this is what I want to ask you. So,
and I'm going to read the books you read me. But what is so listen, Leah, that's been an excellent chat.
I've really, really enjoyed it.
Good. I'm glad. I thought it was very interesting. I hope people take stuff from it and go read some books. Yeah, definitely go read some books. This is the first time in the podcast I've been able to chat about books. Actually, on our current book on Between Two Books at the moment, is called How Much of These Hills is Gold by C. Pam Zhang. So that's the one you should read. Is that, when's it changing? When's the next one? Will they have September? Time? Yeah, you'll have time to read September. It. Yeah. I'll read it. So, you do history one as well, do you? So history is our current theme. We have like a theme every time. Well, it's kind of a new thing for us, but history is our theme, and then we're kind of like recommending a few books to read alongside our main read. I'll get through as many as I can. Try. I love recommendations, and I've never listened to an audiobook. I'm listening to, I'd highly recommend it, because I find actually this is kind of, it's about the whole like dyspraxia thing, so like I'm quite unfocused, my attention isn't great, you know. I find audiobooks really great because I can be doing, like, I can be cleaning my room, I can be literally having a shower, I can be going for a walk, and I can have the audiobook on at the same time, so I can multitask. And I find it like easier to focus because it's like someone reading to me. So I'd really recommend them. Brilliant. Well, that's the thing as well. A lot of people in their cars listen to them as well. That's it. I actually listen to podcasts. You'll be listening to this one from now on. Exactly. I will. But I'll just fly through these, because that's not a comfortable seat. I know that. So thanks to John, his family, and to Megan, to my mum, my dad, my grandfather, and Ger. Nearly forgot Ger there. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Facebook, the Wheatley, Instagram is Wheatley_there. Twitter is something like that. What is it? Wheatley the Weekly, I think. Anyway, Spotify, Apple, Anchor, etc. All those things. If you want to find us on Discord, myself and John and a few other people are on there just having a chat. Some mad person wants to have us all the guests meet up for a meal. I'm like, there's loads of you now. Like, oh, God. If it's allowed with COVID, I'm up for it. Like, that's what I said. I'll leave it till the next day. But I mean, a nervous wreck I'd be at that. But yeah, listen. As always, thanks to you all for listening and for all your support. And go to Between Two Books. I didn't say that. I should have said it earlier on. go to Instagram and Facebook.
Yeah, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, website currently in development.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, cool.
it'll be there soon. So it's just between 2 books.
Oh,
Yeah.
excellent. So yeah, follow that and have a read.
Yeah.
All good. So that's it. Leah, you can get out of that seat now.
Thanks so much,
Thanks
Derek.
very much. Take care, everyone. Bye.